A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express Papers Chandigarh edition. Today is 30th of November. Now, before starting with the news analysis, I would like to tell you we have a Telegram channel where I'm sharing current affairs based MCQs. So you can join and practice those questions. And besides, when we are doing the news analysis, some additional reference reading is done. So that also I share over there. Now, from today's news analysis, one is we get to know about the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. Then, from the editorial opinion section, this article is important. Not another COP out. COP 28. We have been talking about this, but today's article is written by Mr. Ashok Lavasa, a former bureaucrat who is engaged in India's negotiations on this topic, thereby important. Then coming to international section, there is a mention of Lanka. There is a progress on Sri Lanka, restructuring of debt. And here there is a reference of an international grouping known as Paris Club of Creditors. So this can be asked in prelims, the members, the nature of organization, etc. Okay. Moving on in the economy section, we get to know that 16th Finance Commission, the terms of reference have been finalized. Fine. But the terms have not been disclosed. So this topic is again there. We can also revisit the 15th Finance Commission, 15th and 14th. Then no progress on WTO talks on agricultural subsidies or WTO AOA. Questions are being asked on this topic in the GS2 paper. Okay. In the explained section, it's a bit blurred up. There is one article talking about India's overall position in the climate change summits. So very good article, very comprehensive. I would suggest you to read separately also. Okay, coming to the front page now. So this concerns the plot to kill separatist Pano. So he's a US citizen. Now so a finding has come up that US has accused Indian official of plotting to kill separatist Pano. So there is an Indian intelligence official besides another Indian citizen and two individuals. Right? So official plus Indian citizen plus two individuals. So one is a source and the hitman. Incidentally, both these people happen to be US intelligence, US officers. And thereby the plot was foiled. Sounds like a movie plot actually, more so. Okay. Now, of course, this is going to affect India-US relationship. It is a test for this. And besides, it is also indicative of cooperation between Canada and India under the Five Eyes network. Right. So these two things come to light. Canada had made accusations before, and it is believed that Canada had made accusations based on evidence given by the US under the Five Eyes framework. Okay, let's move ahead. Over 81 crore poor to get food grains for another 5 years. Okay. So this is a reference to the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Kalyan Anna Yojana. Recently, the Prime Minister said that free grains would be provided for another 5 years. Now, what would be the subsidy burden? That is the main concern. So according to the government estimates, it will cost rupees 11.8 lakh crores. Now you can divide this by 5, you will get the yearly data also. Okay. So this is the expense. So food subsidy topic comes to light. Now let's go deeper into this Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. This scheme is there to implement the National Food Security Act. So National Food Security Act was a law created by the parliament which says that food security shall be provided. So Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana under the BJP regime, it's the scheme which ensures this is happening. It will affect rural urban, so that breakup is given. Okay. Next, Manipur, there is a progress. Manipur's UNLF, right? So UN, United National Liberation Front. So this is a Meitei insurgent group which is operating from the valley area. Valley area is where the Meiteis and the Kukis conflict. It is the valley where the plains and the mountains or the hills meet. So they have decided to bid farewell to arms. There is some agreement with the government. Modalities of this agreement are normally not known. All we know is the places where they reside, they will continue to reside. There will be camps over there. Right. So that much we know from here. Okay. We also know that previously, when it came to the Kuki organization, so Kuki and Zomi insurgent groups, there was something known as SOO, suspension of operations against Kuki Zomi group. So suspension of operations from the center against this group. Let's move forward now. Punjab drug addiction issue is there, right? So in the Punjab legislature, the health minister has said, and this is applicable to the entire India, okay, 80 to 90% of the addicts who are admitted into rehabilitation treatment, outpatient opioid assisted treatment, right? So de-addiction centers where they go, so they get their treatment. 89%, 80 to 90% of these people, their treatment is relapsing. They again get back into consuming drugs. Now, why is this happening? This is happening because the people, let's say the people got addicted because of their peer groups, the social environment, etc. Now they go into the de-addiction center. When they are released, they again enter into the same social setup and again they are addicted. So that is a problem. So when we're looking at the issue of drugs, so one is, of course, we need the de-addiction centers, but besides this, a more holistic approach is needed. Right? Employment should be done, skill development, decriminalization of addicts. So we have to look at it a more comprehensive way. We cannot just focus over here. We need to focus on the social environment as well and the social conditions of that individual. Now there is a mention of Vikasit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. It is basically an initiative which aims at pan-India initiative of the center, which aims at creating awareness amongst the public of various government schemes. One is, of course, elections are also coming. So making people aware of the initiatives of the center for the welfare of the people. So government welfare schemes. Plus, it also entails a component that is where the schemes, the shortage is there needs to be intensification in implementation of the schemes. So there are two components over here. So one is awareness, other is intensification of the scheme. So you can see from this image also, Jal Jeevan Mission, Ujjwala Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Kalyan Anna Yojana, something to do with farmers, right? Food procurement, MSP, Asha workers, healthcare maybe, or Anganwadis, self-help groups. Okay. So if we, and I don't know if it is, just a second. Fine, we'll come to this again then. Yeah, Modi ki guarantee, Modi Sarkar ki guarantee, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. Now in this, in addition to the schemes that are there is inauguration of a number of Jan Aushadhi Kendras. Jan Aushadhi mean medicines. So Jan people, Jan Aushadhi Kendras, government centers where you can get medicines at an affordable price. Generic medicines are promoted. Okay, so this is being implemented under the Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana. Pariyojana means project. Besides, there is a mention of Pradhan Mantri Mahila Kisan Drone Kendra, where women would be trained into drones, operational of the drones. They'll be provided with drones, right? So this can be used to aid farming activities or some other activities. So this is being done. This was there in the PIB, same thing, nothing much. Same was mentioned over there also. Next, Cabinet approves rupees 24,000 crore schemes for particularly vulnerable tribal groups. What was the name of the scheme? Pradhan Mantri Janjati. Janjati means tribal. Janjati Adivasi Nyay Maha Abhigyan. What was the component? The basic idea was that the PVTG, they are more isolated. Their infrastructure over there is weak. So basic amenities shall be provided to them, which has not been done over the years. So it is in a way a nyay or a justice to those people. So 24,000 crores have been allocated for this thing. This will be implemented under the Development Action Plan, and facilities like housing, drinking water, already existing schemes, they will be brought to the excluded areas where PVTG resides. Okay, right. So all those things will be done over here. This was announced on the birth anniversary of Birsa Munda, November 15th. Now the big question, Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Nyay Maha Abhigyan, overseen by Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Is it a central sector scheme or a centrally sponsored scheme? Some, statement-wise question. One of the statements could be focusing on this aspect. So I couldn't find a direct mention that it is a central sector or a centrally sponsored scheme, but it does say that center will contribute so much, states will contribute so much. That amount is mentioned. So this implies that it is a centrally sponsored scheme. In central sector scheme, the complete burden is by the central government, while in the centrally sponsored scheme, the costing is shared. Now we also know the distribution of tribals, state-wise. So Odisha has the largest population of the PVTG. Madhya Pradesh is second. Then we have Andhra Pradesh. Next, why is governor sitting on bills? Asks Supreme Court. May take up Kerala plea for norms. Same thing again, repeatedly being there in the news. So there is Article 200 of the Constitution, which says that when a bill comes to the governor, he may either give his assent, he may withhold his assent, or give it to the president for his consideration. Right? So that is there. Now, this Article 200 does not specify the timeline in which the governor shall act. This basically amounts to pocket veto. So the timeline is not specified as such. And this is being challenged by the various state governments against their governors. Now, the petitioner has said that it is time that the court lays down some guidelines to when the governor shall reserve a bill. Some sort of a framework should be there, stipulated by the Supreme Court. The basic issue is discretionary powers and non-codification by the Constitution itself. That is the fundamental flaw over here. Next. Okay. Editorial opinion page. We have two articles, both of them about the Selkyara tunnel. Just focus over here. So it says, when we look at this rescue operation that took place, so there are two things we can learn from there, two lessons that we get. So lesson number one is the whole of government operation that could be seen. So government, public sector companies like ONGC, NDMA, all of them collaborated together, and it was a successful operation. Plus, the modalities of future rescue operation in such a case, that also comes to light. We saw some problems and challenges. Those can be converted into SOPs and later implemented. So this can serve as a blueprint for future operations. One thing that is not mentioned, but I think it's still a lesson, is sustainability. Himalayas are not Alps, right? They are young fold mountains. They are not very stable. And somewhere we need to relook developmental activities, or some alternative has to be made over here. So that is the lesson number 2 with reference to the Himalayan ecology. We can also look at the dams, the glacial lake outburst floods and the associated damage, etc. So that may be seen over here, thought of. Okay, next, insolvency bankruptcy code, loose ends. Let me tell you what is insolvency bankruptcy code first. Then, of course, we can analyze that further. Okay. Insolvency bankruptcy code is a mechanism whereby, when the companies, corporates, when they operate, they take loans from the creditors. And because, let's say, due to some reason, the companies are not able to pay back, because let's say the business operations did not work out, the profits were not there, revenue was not there. So now they are not in a position to pay back the creditors, mostly the banks. So in that case, how can the creditors get back their money? So that is one issue. And secondly, let's say a faulty decision has been made by the head of the company, and now they want to exit the business, exit their positions. So insolvency bankruptcy codes provides for that. So it allows for the corporates to exit in case of business failure. And secondly, it provides for the creditors to retrieve their money. Whatever assets that they have through the loans, retrieve that in case this company has turned into an NPA. Okay. So yeah, so what happens in the this system now? Basically, the need for insolvency bankruptcy code was felt because the previous arrangements that were there, they used to take a lot of time. Plus, it did not allow the companies to exit also because of the regulatory issues, and thereby the insolvency bankruptcy code. Now, what does it say? It says that, let's say, when a proceeding of IBC starts, then the management shall fall into the hands of insolvency professionals. They will look into the overall running of the company. Now, on that basis, they may suggest restructuring of debt. So that may take place if they feel that it is viable. So they may consider restructuring. They may consider change of management. So that may also be done. Or in the last case resort, when neither of this works out, liquidation of the companies, that is selling the assets of the company, that can be done. So that is for the insolvency professionals to decide. Okay. So with this, obviously with this, if restructuring is successful, the banks will keep getting their credits, right? So, and the company will also survive, or the assets of the company can be sold and the creditors can get their money, whatever they can get. Now, normally it is seen that roughly asset value, 7% of outstanding debt is only received economic value because of the loss in the assets of the company. Okay. Now, some facts over here, some other things that are mentioned in this article. It says that IBC has helped improve the ease of doing business rankings. So that has been done. Besides, the time taken by the IBC is much lower. It is a time-bound framework. The time is much lower. Even though it said that it should be done in 180 days, resolution plus 90 days, it is beyond this. So 270 days, 180 plus 90 is 270. So 67% of the cases are resolved in 270 days, and 2+ years is for 55%. Even though it is more than this, but still it is a progress compared to the previous arrangements. And this also needs to be plugged. Okay. So we get an overall idea of the insolvency bankruptcy code. If you read further now, like from anywhere on the websites, net, you can get the holistic viewpoint on the IBC. Okay, next article. Today is World AIDS Day. The author over here is simply stating AIDS is a sexually transmitted disease, right? So he's saying that the vulnerable sections more focus has to be given over them, and not specifically stating, but the prostitution that is happening, right? And those who are more vulnerable, so they're poor plus they are more susceptible because of their profession. It should be ensured that the treatment is accessible to them. They do not face discrimination. So that is what basically the author is saying over here. Now, if we look at the program of the government, it is the National AIDS Control Program, which deals with the HIV treatment. Now coming to the, again, opinion only. So one is again about G20, Prime Minister Modi's article, which I think he's gotten it. It's fine. G20, he says that it is, it's an achievement for India. It revitalized multilateralism, amplified the voice of the global South, championed development, and fought for empowerment of women. That's it. That's it. I can work on this. We get certain themes actually. So multilateralism, the voice of the global South, right? So we get some themes from exam point of view. Next is not another COP out. So this is about the COP 28 Dubai that is going to take place. So that this should not be like they make commitments, the countries make commitments on the climate change and actually nothing happens. Okay, so let's see what Mr. Ashok Lavasa says, who was the former finance secretary and led the Indian delegation in the Paris summit, COP21. So some key things that we get from this article. So one is this organization, Global Legal Action Network. So they say that existing policies that are there to deal with climate change and to restrict the global rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, it is not adequate. In fact, the same has been stated by the global emissions gap report. So that is also there, right? So we are on the pathway of reaching 2.9 degrees Celsius. This will eventually lead to catastrophic weather events and make the people more vulnerable. Fine. So the main point is stated over here. Now, when the COP28 is taking place, the following needs to be looked into. One is that there is a resource deficit. To manage the emission cut, more resources are needed. We need to make the transition into the clean energy. So that again will require more resources, more technology, more funding is required. So according to the IMF, $5 trillion are needed. $5 trillion are needed by 2050 to meet this goal. Okay. By the way, that this is released by the Global Financial Stability Report. From this report, we get this fact: $5 trillion are needed. Okay. And if we look at the developing countries, developing countries, of course, would require much. The burden of this 5 trillion will be disproportionately more on the developing countries that they require. And obviously, they do not have the resources and the means to do so. They will have to depend on the developed nations, the rich nations, in providing this funding. Okay, so that is the main point. So they need more support. Now, if we look at this, as far as the United Nations Framework Convention of countries go, it has classified into the countries into 4 sections: Annex 1, Annex 2, Annex, Non-Annex 1, and least developed countries. So it is the Annex 2 countries the ones that are marked in green over here. Yeah, Annex 1 and Annex 2 countries. Basically, this green and this green over here, this is Annex, there's something wrong over here, Annex 2. So these countries had an obligation under the Kyoto Protocol to provide greater support to the developing nations so that the goal of climate change can be addressed. Annex 2 countries. Annex 1 are economies in transition. This is the one marked in blue over here. East Europe and Soviet, USS, Russia. So Annex 2 had this responsibility to support non-Annex 1 countries, which are low-income developing countries, which is countries like India, etc., marked in orange. Right, marked. So this color. Okay, so that had to be done. Now it also brings to light the focus on common but differentiated responsibilities, historical liabilities also, that developed countries have succeeded. They have become developed because they got into industrial revolution. A lot of pollution took place. So they share the burden. Plus they are developed, they are well off, they have greater means and technology also. So they should bear the burden. Now this brings to light the topic of climate finance and the Green Climate Fund, whereby the commitment was made that every year $100 billion would be given to the non-Annex 1 countries. Right, and we see that there is a shortcoming over there. By the way, the Green Climate Fund, the proposal came up in 2009, the Copenhagen Accord. And the Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 thing came up in 1997, the Kyoto Protocol, which is also known as the COP3. Okay, so we have this resource deficit. Now, because of non-fulfillment of the commitments, there is a commitment deficit. Commitments are made by the developed, they don't fulfill it. In fact, developing have also made their own commitments under the nationally determined contributions. So there also we can say there is a commitment deficit. So there is a commitment deficit. And over the years, because the developed have not fulfilled their commitments, there is a trust deficit between the two blocks. There is a trust deficit also, which is again leading to stagnancy in progress on the climate change talks. Right. So that's it actually. And because of this, the climate change talks have become a paralyzed force. We need to rejuvenate it and move forward. Coming to the world section now. So Israel-Hamas ceasefire coming to an end. Mediators seek extension. Okay. Nawaz Sharif's name from the graft has been revoked. Next. Lanka creditor nations agree in principle on restructuring of debt. Okay. As simple as this, Sri Lanka, sometime back, they had a balance of payment crisis. That is, they had borrowed more. They were not able to pay back this money. As a result of this, imports to Lanka was affected. Cost, inflation, etc. had gone to a rise. The currency devalued, all those things. Now Sri Lanka was seeking more loans plus restructuring of existing debt. Now in this regard, there is a mention of Paris Club of Creditors, right? So which includes Japan, and they could be formalizing something with regards to the restructuring of debt. Now, what is this Paris Club of Creditors? So it's a group of officials from major creditor countries whose role is to find correlated, coordinated, sustainable solutions. This includes US, Canada, Brazil, West European nations, Russia, and Australia. China is not there, by the way. Very important point. China and this, this Saudi and UAE area, that is also not there. Next, oil at 82, USD at 83.32. Coming to economy. Okay. Government clears 16th Finance Commission terms. Disaster management funds reviews on talks, on cards. Okay. First of all, what is this Finance Commission, which you have studied? You should have studied in polity, and it is marked in green, by the way. And then the key things that happened recently. Okay. So as simple as this, there is Article 280 of the Constitution, which says that President shall constitute a finance commission. A finance commission. So it's a constitutional body. By the way, this itself was asked in the mains paper. If I'm not wrong, 2018 mains paper, GS2, I think it was asked. Okay, so finance commission. Now, what is finance commission? Principally, see, a lot of things that they review concerning matters of finance, but main thing that they see is how would the proceeds of the union government, the tax proceeds, union tax, income tax, corporation tax, etc., how the proceeds of the union government will be devolved to the states. Number of states are there, right? So how this money would go to the states. And from here, how would it be distributed? What would be the formula according to which different states would get the money? Fine. So that formula is provided for by the Finance Commission, and the government abides by it. Okay. So this, and it also provides for the principles of giving grants in aid to the states, so that that is also provided for. How money would from union would flow to the states with regards to the grants in aid. I hope this thing is clear. Now moving on. The 15th Finance Commission, when it came, it was proposed, when the Finance Commission is coming up, there are the terms of reference issued to the Finance Commission. That is, the government wants you to consider the following things, the terms of reference. One of the important points that were being discussed during the 15th Finance Commission was that the formula of transferring money to the states should be accordance with the 2011 population data. At the moment, it is being done in accordance with 1971 population data, 1971 census. So they wanted to be done in according with this. When this was announced, the southern states had protested because the population in the UP Bihar since 1971 has gone up significantly as compared to the southern states. The reason for keeping this like this was the population related measures are taken by the state. States are not incentivized to increase population. That was the idea, because if more population is there, more funding will go from the union to the states. Okay, so that was the thing that was proposed. However, the Finance Commission went with the 1971 data. Come to the 16th Finance Commission. The terms have been cleared by the government, but this time they have not disclosed what are the terms. Possibly because of this issue that took place previously. So nothing beyond we know about it. We just know that the government has cleared terms. And one more thing you should know is that when Finance Commission gives recommendation, it is still up to the government to implement it or not. It's up to the government. If they want, they can send this report to another commission to review it. Next article, no progress at WTO agri talks. Stockholding issue eludes consensus. Long story cut short, WTO is an organization which aims at providing free and fair global trade. Right? Free and fair global trade. And within WTO, there is an agreement on agriculture, which looks at agriculture related trade and cooperation on that. So when the agreement on agriculture came forward, it was principally agreed that subsidies which are trade distorting should be brought down, or it should be removed. In fact, it proposed that there are 3 categories or 3 boxes of subsidy: green box, blue box, and amber box. The subsidies in the amber box were deemed as subsidies that are trade distorting. Fine. Okay. Now, when it comes to developed nations, their subsidy is mainly going into the category of green subsidy and blue subsidy. It is also to do with that the farmers over there, they do not so much depend on agriculture for sustenance. There is no subsistence farming as such. They are hardcore capitalists over there. But in India's case, the situation is very different. In India's case, the government provides for a minimum support price to the farmers. In fact, the farmers are demanding legalization of MSP. And besides, to ensure that the issue of hunger is addressed, the government procures food and then distributes them at great subsidy in the ration places, ration depots, etc., or public distribution setups. PDS, public distribution system. Okay, we just covered Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Okay, so when the government is selling the food grains or distributing the food grains, obviously it is affecting the market of the food grains. It is affecting the prices. In fact, the government on purpose tries to regulate the prices of the food also. So in a way, it is affecting the export market because export grains are, exporters suffer because of this. Okay, so that is the thing. So subsidy, now when the first time agreement on agriculture came up, it was decided that the subsidy in amber box, which is trade distorting, should come down. India already had MSP and public stockholding, which was seen as subsidy under amber box. Okay. Subsequently, the Doha summit, India had later realized this is problematic. In the Doha summit, it was declared that the subsidy should come down. The subsidy should be brought to 10% of the prices of the 90 levels of 1988. 10% of the 1988 prices. It should come down. So there was a disagreement on this regard as far as India is concerned, because 10% of the 1988 prices, imagine you are in 2023, for almost 40 years, right? So the prices have gone up. So 10% of 1988 prices will be breached in 2023. In fact, we have almost breached that level. So this was problematic. So even if we do not extend anything, just by the virtue of taking 1988 prices, we will be breaching this. Okay. Then there was a Bali summit in 2013. India had a problem with this, and no progress was taking place in the WTO issue. So the Doha round was unresolved. So in the Bali summit, it was decided that there shall be a temporary waiver. Not a permanent waiver, but a temporary waiver for countries like India, because they have to deal with the issue of food security, hunger, etc. Now, India wants progress on this because this is a temporary waiver. Ultimately, India will be in violation of international law. So that is a matter of concern for us. Now, there is no progress on this issue. Sucking issue eludes consensus. US and Canada want the subsidies to go away because they consider this as a distorting subsidy. Now coming to India at the climate change. So brief overview about the India's position on this issue. Okay. So first of all, what are India's emissions? India, it is stated to be the third largest emitter. Right? You can just simply Google it. India is the third largest emitter, US number 1, China, and then India. Over the years, 40% of emissions are now coming from electricity production, so coal-based power plants, while land transport contributes 10% of the pollution. Fine, so some additional facts. Now, if we look at per capita consumption, per capita emissions, so that would be very low because India's population is so huge. It's a per capita, this thing is very low. And in this regard, the developed nations, you would see the per capita emissions are much, much, much higher. So this is a position that we use, in international negotiations. Now coming to India at the COPs historically. Okay. So the COPs start with the Rio Earth Summit, 1992 Rio Earth Summit, where the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change came into picture. Okay. So UNFCCC came into being in Rio Earth Summit, important point. And India formulated with the like-minded countries the policy of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, CBDR and RC. So common, that the issue of climate change is a common issue. All countries have to cooperate, but the responsibilities have to be differentiated because certain countries are developed as compared to the other. Plus the capabilities, the respective capabilities of developed nations, be it respect to finances, be it with respect to technology, is more as compared to the developing and the less developed countries. So this was in 1992. 1997, there happens the Kyoto Protocol, the most important summit, the Kyoto Protocol. So it agreed upon the principle of CBDR, RC. It agreed upon this principle, and thereby we have this list of Annex 2, Annex 1, and non-Annex 1. Annex 1 are the developed countries who have the responsibility of doing things to enable or empower the non-Annex 1 countries also. Okay. But over the years, we have seen that Annex 2 countries, right? Annex 2 countries have not fulfilled its commitments. In fact, there is a gradual erosion of the concept of CBDR-RC, common but differentiated responsibilities. There is a gradual this thing. And in fact, the developed nations are saying that the developing countries, more so India, should do more on the climate change fight. Okay. Then we have the Glasgow meeting where India promised all countries they were supposed to, state their intensify their measures for the 2030 climate change measures. So they had to take more measures. So in the 2030 summit, they were also to say as to by when they will be carbon neutral. So India has said that by 2070, India will be carbon neutral. Right? So 2030, 70, and the peak emission will take place around 2040, 2045. So that would be done. And besides, the India's climate commitments can be given from here. These are also known as intended nationally determined contributions. So India has committed that their emissions per unit of GDP shall come down to 33% from 33% from 2005 levels by 2030. So 2005 levels. Second, 40% of its installed power generation, 40% will come from the renewable energy, and it will create carbon sinks to the tune of at least 2.5 to 3 billion tons. Carbon sinks basically means trees, mangroves, etc. But no specific targets have been specified as to by which what all would be done. So the broad outline has been given by India. Okay. Now, one thing that I missed over here, so after the Kyoto Protocol and before the Glasgow Summit, the Kyoto was coming to an end. It was to be reviewed. So there was this COP21, which is known as the Paris Summit. So Kyoto Protocol basically laid the framework on how the climate fight would take place. Later, this was revisited in the Paris Summit. And today, whatever is happening, we will make a reference of the COP21. Previously, it was Kyoto. Now it is COP21, where it was made the commitment of 1.5 degrees Celsius rise to be restricted. Climate change, global warming to be restricted to 1.5 degrees Celsius was reaffirmed or reiterated. Now, what are India's initiatives? So one is the nationally determined contributions. Besides this, India's global initiatives. So one is at the Paris summit, India came up with the International Solar Alliance, right? So International Solar Alliance, besides Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And because climate change has a disaster component to it, so that India is one of the founding members, India's initiative. Besides, India is making a case for making behavioral changes, because if we can reduce our consumption, each individual does that, then of course the emissions intensity will also come down. India is also referring to the International Energy Agency to do an analysis of its proposal. And with reference to the behavioral changes, India has this program known as India's Life Mission. Life is Lifestyle for Environment Mission. Okay, so that's it. Now, India, when it is dealing with the climate change issues, it is working with other countries. So there is one G77 group, which is a misnomer because there are actually 130 countries in this. They are fighting against the Annex 2 nations on the climate change talks. Now, what are India's red lines? India's red lines is common but differentiated responsibility with respective capabilities. But this principle has been coming down. It has been eroded. Second is, do not say that India should cut down its emission because India's economic growth requires that. So, but at the same time, India itself has made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2070. Then no emissions cut in agriculture sector, because it is a no-grow area. If it is said, then it will have to change the cropping pattern and all cropping practices, right? So that is, again, it's a very sensitive topic, so we don't talk about this. Okay, so that's it from today's news analysis.